Welcome to the Transportation and Parking Commission. May we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Item 1, regular business agenda. Item 1A, roll call. Commissioner Merabian.
Here.
Commissioner Sahakian.
Present.
Commissioner Wiseman.
Here.
Commissioner Welch.
Here.
Chairperson Salayan.
Here. Next item.
Item 1B, flag salute. Chairperson Salayan.
I'll give the honor to Mr. Sakian. Council.
Thank you. Please stand up. Put your right hand over your heart. Recite with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next item.
Item 1C, selection of Transportation and Parking Commission members for the Multi-Family Parking Committee.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to invite Alan Loomis from Planning Division, the Planning Department, to make a short presentation on this issue and request Commission's two volunteer commissioners to participate in this effort.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Bogdanian. Commissioners, very briefly, we were here in March, at your March meeting, at the direction of the City Council to use the Transportation and Parking Commission as a forum to discuss some of the issues of parking enforcement in multifamily neighborhoods. At that time, the Commission suggested that you thought it'd be a good idea if you had a subcommittee of two of you that would work with the staff to go to the various meetings that we'll be setting up with some of the property management associations and organized management groups to really get into the issue. And so we thought that was a good idea and told you that we'd come back later in the summer to start that process. So it's later in the summer, getting later in the summer, and so we're here to start that process. But before we do, we thought it'd be you would probably like to appoint the two members of the commission that be part of this subcommittee to work with us, starting in July and going into August and September, before you'd be able to come back to make a report to the full TPC. So that's basically the discussion today. Once we know which two members we'll be working with, we'll be able to contact you and set up the meetings and let you know when those will be happening. So I can answer further questions about that process to the extent that we have it defined, but tonight's really for the five of you to make a decision as to which two are going to be working on this issue with us.
Thank you. Quick question. You know what days of the week?
We haven't picked particular days of the week. We anticipate there'll probably be a series of different meetings. First, probably meeting with staff. We think probably the two commissioners that will be working with us will have opinions about what issues they'd like to study. We'd like to run the process by those two commissioners, so you're part of actually defining the schedule and how we'll be approaching the topic, and then we'll be able to set up meetings with the property managers and interested parties. We would anticipate that these meetings would probably be during regular business hours rather than evening meetings or weekend meetings.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Yes.
If I may. What I'd like to know is what this committee is going to be involved in. It says presenting solutions for multi-family parking issues. Now, is it a decision-making process and be able to change existing rules and regulations that the Planning Commission has adopted as far as number of parking spaces per unit? If you can just give me an idea.
Certainly. There are a number of different issues involved. I think part of what this subcommittee working with staff would do would be to try and understand what are the issues surrounding them, this particular problem. Sometimes it's an issue of enforcement, that there are existing regulations, but there are enforcement problems with apartment owners that, for example, don't lease out their parking spaces to their tenants but use them to store their own vehicles or lease those to other people for storage. There's enforcement issues there. There's also issues that sometimes get into preferential parking districts, which you're familiar with, where there's simply not enough parking available. in particular apartment neighborhoods. There's also some issues of commercial properties, parking in residential neighborhoods. So there's a mix of issues that the committee would look into. And to the extent that some of these issues or problems could be resolved with changes in the zoning code or changed with further enforcement or changed with or resolved with recommendations for policy, the working group would get into the issues and make those particular recommendations to the TPC as a whole that then could make those recommendations to the council. The council really intended the TPC to be the working group to dig into these issues and develop recommendations.
Okay. And how often do the committee meets? Is it weekly or bi-weekly?
My guess is it'd probably be a bi-weekly at the most frequent. I think our thought process was probably if we met on a bi-weekly basis, the most frequently a bi-weekly basis over the summer, probably by September, the two subcommittee members could make a full report to the commission, and then the commission as a whole could decide what further action they wanted to take.
Ruby, go ahead.
So there's a 2 to 3 months time limit, basically, to come out with findings and then make a recommendation?
That's right. That's kind of our thought process right now. As I said, the two committee members may suggest a slightly different time frame and a way of approaching it, but that's our thought process now.
Would it be all-day meeting or half-a-day meeting?
It'd probably be at the most a half-day meeting. I can't imagine us spending more than 4 hours on a particular topic. Probably more like 2 hours.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
are you inviting other commission members, like Planning Commission or
No, not at this time.
no?
This is a working group with the TPC. As I said, the council asked this particular item to come to the Transportation and Parking Commission, and it was your suggestion to have two subcommittee members, which we thought was a fine idea.
So basically, this meeting will be between property management managers, the city, and TPC.
Yeah, the two
committee
subcommittee members.
Okay. Any other questions? Any volunteers?
Mr. Chair, unfortunately, I am tied up with too many commitments.
Okay.
I'll be happy if I'm available to cover for one of the members if they're not able to attend. But as far as fully committing, I've taken on too many responsibilities and I won't be able to.
Okay. How about Mr. Welsh?
I'll be happy to do it but I'll defer to other people if they would prefer. I'll be happy to defer to them, but I'll be a fill-in if you need me to.
Given that I've already had one chance to volunteer, I'd love to give somebody else an opportunity. But if we end up one person short, I'd be glad to be considered as as the last resort. But I'd be perfectly happy if two other people besides me want to do it.
Okay, Mr.
I'll try it for the first 3 months. If I can continue to do it, I will do it. If not, then I'll let you guys know. I'll do it for the first 3 months.
It's about 3 months anyway.
Just for 3 months.
Okay. Regarding myself, I have the same feeling. I'll try. I would like to volunteer, but it all depends. If on that day, on any particular day, I won't be able to make it, if Mr. Sarkisian can cover me, that would be great. But I won't mind to volunteer.
Mr. Chairman, unfortunately, I know your term and Mr. Commissioner Sahakian's term expires in August.
That's right.
And so my suggestion would be to have commissioners and there's a good chance that by the time the City Council appoints new commissioners,
Right.
It may take several months, and you will be okay in that period of time. But for continuity purposes, so that once the group starts working, my suggestion would be to be commissioners that are continuing. It's unfortunate that your term is up. We
Right.
need to lose both of you. But in case there is a problem, not a problem, if new commissioners come on board, then the committee has to start all over again. And hopefully this is a 3-month effort. They would like to finish it so we can go back to City Council. So my suggestion would be 2 commissioners that are continuing. And then if both of you are available to fill in their spot when they can't, then that might be the best approach.
So that means Mr. Welsh and Mr. Weissman.
I believe, Mr. Commissioner, I'll leave it up to the commission, the
Is he
three of
also
you,
up?
to decide.
Okay.
So,
Want to flip a coin?
How about this? How about if you can accept both, Mr. Mehrabian already accepted, if you could accept, or Mr. Weissman can accept, and see how if there's any changes.
Okay, I'll accept it if Bill can also be my backstop, in case I can't make a commitment that he
Sure,
can step
I'd be
in,
happy to.
Okay.
So at least between the
we'll
two of
have
us, we can.
Commissioner Mehrabian and Commissioner Welch
And
for this, and Commissioner Weissman will
can be a backup.
as a backup
Backup.
for
As an alternate.
both of them,
Or alternate.
possibly.
Sure.
Yeah.
Just in case one of you can't
Yeah, you can't
attend,
do it.
then
I'll do it, you can't do it.
yeah, that will probably be the best combination.
Okay then.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We will be in touch with the three commissioners who volunteered to serve. In fact, the staff team is meeting tomorrow, so we'll set up and be in touch with you very shortly as to when our first meeting will be. So I would anticipate within a week or two.
Great.
Just a comment to the commission, and that is you would not be able to have any more than two commissioners at a time attend the meeting, so the backup would just need to inform himself of what is occurring in the meetings in case you do need to serve as a backup.
I think we can probably work that out. They can send me an email or whatever. Status.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Thomas. All right. Next item.
Item 2, posting of agenda. The agenda for the Monday, June 22nd, 2009 regular meeting of the Glendale Transportation and Parking Commission was posted by Friday, June 19th, 2009, before 5:30 p.m. on the bulletin board outside of City Hall.
Okay, thank you. Next item.
Item 3, approval of minutes. Item 3A, April 27th, 2009 regular meeting approval of minutes. Item 3B, May 4th, 2009 special meeting approval of minutes.
Okay, thank you. Any questions?
No comments.
No comments? Okay. All right, next item.
We have to.
Oh, sorry.
I move the approval of the minutes of April 27th regular meeting, 2009, and May 4th, 2009 special meeting.
I second.
I think Commissioner Sahakian was absent on May 4th,
That is correct.
so
Second.
he can? Okay.
Oh, then I'll second it.
There you go.
There would have to be a second for
Okay.
the member that was there.
I second it.
No
All right.
votes required, it's
No votes
unanimous
required, okay.
consent. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next item.
Item 4, oral communication. Discussion is limited to items not a part of this agenda. Each speaker is allowed 5 minutes. The commission may question the speaker, but there will be no debate or decision.
All right, thank you. I have no cards for oral communication. Anybody wants to speak? Not part of this agenda? Okay, oral communication is closed then. Next item.
Item 5, action items. Item 5A, report regarding the downtown parking program and our hours of operation for the parking meters. 5A1, motion recommending operating hours of the parking meters in downtown Glendale to the City Council.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Vecdani?
Mr. Chairman, members of the Transportation Parking Commission, this item has been referred to the TPC by City Council with respect to the hours of operation of the parking meters in the downtown Glendale. In October of 2008, City Council approved the installation of parking meters, changing the hours of operation in the downtown area on on-street, off-street parking lots, and parking rates for the city's parking facilities as well as parking meter rates. In December of 2008, staff went ahead and implemented all the approved changes, including the hours of operation, installation of multi-space meters on Brand Boulevard, and we completed a marketing plan, informed the merchants along Brand Boulevard and other areas as to how the parking meter, multi-space meters are functioning. We had parking ambassadors on street to help people who were trying to use these new machines to make sure that they get used to their usage. And we gave a report back to the City Council in March of 2009, and Council basically asked us to look into the hours of operation and whether or not those were the appropriate hours of operation. City Council members had received some concerns from the merchants that maybe the hours of operation, either it begins 6 a.m. in the morning to 10 p.m. at night. It used to be 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. Those hours of operation may be too long, and maybe we need to shorten those hours of operation. So Council directed staff to do a personal survey. In other words, instead of sending surveys out to the merchants, that we have staff actually go to each business and do a interview with the individual merchants to receive their input. So we did that. We went essentially door to door along Brand Boulevard, from North Brand, where the parking meters begin, all the way to Colorado at the south end, where the parking meters are in place. So on that survey that we did, we covered, this is the area of existing on-street meters in the downtown. That includes Brand Boulevard, Glendale Avenue, Broadway. These are all where on-street meters currently exist. This is our downtown parking facility map, where it shows the Orange Street garage, shows the Marketplace garage, and shows the Exchange garage. In addition, the surface lots that are in downtown area, which were also the hours of operations changed. Currently, we are in the process of actually installing the same type of multi-space meters that we have on Brand Boulevard in the surface lots. So they are already being installed. Those single head meters will be replaced by the multi-space meters, and we're on schedule. Within 30 to 45 days, basically, will go live, and those meters will also be operational. What we did as part of our evaluation to see whether or not the installation of the meters had an impact on the parking occupancy, because the main concern originally why we put in meters on Brand Boulevard primarily was that the on-street meters, there was no parking meters on street. Parking was free. However, we have a 2-hour parking restriction on Brand. Early in the morning, between 6 and 9 a.m., essentially you have employees of the businesses from office buildings or the retail merchants. They park on streets from 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., or depending what time they arrive in that window. And then after 9 a.m., they can still park for an additional 2 hours, which 9 a.m. is when most of the businesses start opening, and they will have there will be not enough on-street parking on Brand. Some blocks are impacted more than other blocks, depending on the type of merchants that you have there. Essentially, businesses that have coffee, they sell coffee because that's the prime time where people buy coffee. Or businesses such as Porto's, that is a bakery, or other bakeries that also have a lot of customers early in the morning, throughout the day, and of course in the evening, but primarily that hour was impacted. So what you see here in this chart, in this graph, is from before the meters were installed, we had availability of 25% of the spaces were available before the installation of the meters between the hours of 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Once we installed the meters, the parking occupancy availability of spaces went up to 65%, which is, again, that's an indication where you had a group parkers that were using on-street during the hours, and they were not really retail-oriented visitors or customers, because those hours, most of these businesses, with the exceptions of the coffee places or bakeries, were open. During the hours of 9 a.m. To 6 p.m., again, the parking occupancy increased, availability of spaces increased from 5% to 24%. And our goal, what was in the mobility plan, was to actually have approximately 15% parking availability on Brand. So if you're driving down Brand Boulevard in any of the blocks at any time, at least you want to have a few spaces available, and we can create another good turnover rate in those spaces. At night, the change was not as high in terms of availability of spaces. We have 3% before at night, means after 6 p.m. There were only 3% of the spaces were available. Now it's 15%, an increase of about 12% that we were able to create more parking on street at nighttime. And obviously, you have businesses that are operating. Most of the businesses operate from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. The types of businesses that are open are coffee places, restaurants, or obviously theaters that are available. They operate, most of them, after 6 p.m., if not throughout the day for their lunch business. So this is what the parking occupancy showed. One also interesting factor was that in the parking structures, we can go to the next slide. This is the survey. In the parking structures, we offered 90-minute free parking for the customers. So 72% of all the visitors, we did a survey after the implementation of the hours and the new rates, and we went with a 90-minute free parking. Before, we had a validation program that the merchants along brand would have to validate a customer's ticket so that they can get a validation of 2 hours. And so after the implementation of the 90-minute free parking program and we installed signage, 72% of all the people who are parking in the parking garages are parking for free. So there is no revenue generated as a result of that. And we believe a combination of the hours and installation of the meters has pushed those customers that want to park longer than 2 hours or want to park for free into the parking structure. So that's an indication of a larger percentage now are parking for free, although the rest of them are parking, paying on the on-street meters. In the Orange Street Garage, which is the lowest occupied parking structure out of the 3 that we have in the downtown, the visitor parking increased from 300 per day to 560 per day. Which is an equivalent of about an 85% increase. So again, that shows some of the business customers that were parking on street. Now they're moving into the Orange Street Garage, which was our goal, to use that garage as much as possible to relieve Rand Boulevard and keep it as a prime parking spaces for the customers that have a short, less than 2 hour parking need. Then, after that, we conducted the survey. As directed by City Council, we did a survey of the businesses along Brand Boulevard to determine what was the result and what the merchants think about the changes. There is a copy of the survey which is in your staff report as an exhibit. From the survey, these are the results that we as staff interpreted from the survey. 80% of the respondents indicated that their customers use the city parking facilities. We wanted to see, are they parking in the structure? Are they available? Do people know where to park? One of the indications that we got is we still have to do a more outreach to the businesses with signage or by information to show that there is these parking structures available where their customers can park for free. 46% of the businesses have employees who use the city parking facilities. Along with the changes in the rates, although we had a slight increase in the monthly parking rate in the garages, we actually reduced the parking rate at the Orange Street Garage for those part-time employees that cannot afford paying $40, $55, or $60 a month. We went down to $30 for those employees, so we can encourage them again not to park on street or in the surface lots, to park in the structure at a reduced rate. 62% of the businesses that have notified that more short-term parking on brand is available since the meters were installed. Again, that goes hand in hand with the indication of the occupancy survey we did that showed that during various hours of 6 to 9 a.m. or 9 to 6 p.m. or 6 to 9 p.m., in those windows, we had more parking spaces available. Then from the 50% of the businesses, about 42 businesses where we got the survey results from, were satisfied with the hours of operation, because we asked them of the 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. hours of operation. Is it satisfactory for the, depending on if they're open till 6 p.m. or beyond, is it satisfactory? So 50% of those who we surveyed said that they were satisfied with the hours of operation. 50% of those who surveyed, we had a varied response. From that 50% of those businesses, 2 of those businesses, I'm going with numbers, it might be a little easier. If there are 42 businesses, 2 of those businesses recommended we go with 9 p.m. 10 of the businesses recommended that we change the hours of operation to 8 p.m. 6 recommended 7 p.m. and 24 businesses recommended that we go back to the 6 p.m. hours of operation. Essentially, half of the 50%, or about 25%, wanted to go back to the hours of operation that we used to have on Brand Boulevard. They didn't mind the installation of the meters, but they felt they would like to have less restriction after 6 p.m., in other words, to operate it for free like we used to have. Also, as from these businesses where we included in the survey, 16 of these businesses overall in the different categories, they are not open after 6 p.m. Essentially, they close their business at 6 p.m. But in general, either the manager or the employee had a concern about having the extended hours of operation. In addition to the survey of the businesses, Downtown Brand Merchants Association, that is very active on Brand Boulevard, we surveyed them, or we've gone to their meetings and we asked their position on that. A representative from the Downtown Merchants Association is present here. They will provide input to the Commission, so I will not go into it. There's one letter that we received from Massage Envy, and I'd like to give Commission a copy of that. If you could pass this on. Anush, please. We just got that today, so that is for the Commission information. We've also individually, some of the merchants that I personally know, or the individuals who are active in the community, have expressed concerns from a standpoint that if you have extended hours of operation, it may be looked at as not customer friendly, and maybe the extended hours till 10 p.m. is not enough, is too restrictive, and maybe we should scale it back either to 6 p.m. or something in that range. So they expressed the concern that people who want to park longer hours after 6 p.m., if they're on brand, they want to park more than 2 hours, they could get cited. Again, we offer the 90-minute free parking in the garages, so you get the first 90 minutes for free. After that, for every additional hour you pay for, as long as you've parked in the structure. So that's in general some of the comments we have received, some of the merchants that couldn't be here tonight that have provided for the Commission's information. What staff has also wanted to present to the Commission, the fiscal impacts in terms of the revenue that is generated based on the 6 months of operation of the multi-space meter and the extended hours of operation. Because remember, we were operating from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m., so all those on-street meters outside downtown, those were also extended, the hours was extended. So the revenue numbers that I'm presenting here, these are annual revenue. That includes the new meters, revenue generated from the brand meters, also revenue generated from the downtown meters with the extended hours. So essentially, based on our 6 months projection, we're generating about $50,000 a month from the on-street meters, multi-space meters on brand. That generates annually $624,000 a year. And it's a very, very consistent number. In fact, from January to February, March, we've seen that number pretty steady. The downtown meters generate $773,000 for a total of approximately $1.4 million in revenue that we're generating. In terms of the 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., we're generating, if the hours were 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., we would lose 2 hours of revenue from 8 to 10 p.m. technically. So that amounts to about $47,000 a year. And by the same token, we will lose about $58,000 in revenue for a total of $106,000. Let's say if we would change the hours of operation from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. If we went back to if we go to 6 a.m. to 6 p.m., again, you lose 4 hours of revenue generation, and that would amount to about $150,000 a year from brand meters, $189,000 from the downtown meters, for a total of $342,000. So if you look at the total revenue that we're projecting, $1.4 million, you lose about $340,000 out of that revenue that could be used for the downtown parking, transit operations, improvements in the downtown area. So essentially what the mobility plan recommended, that the revenue that we're generating basically in this column from brand meters, that we will create what's called a downtown transportation fund, which we haven't created that yet, but that was the recommendation. It was also presented to City Council. We will bring that downtown transportation fund to the Transportation Parking Commission, give you some recommendation how we can spend that money in terms of increasing transit service in the downtown, improving pedestrian activities, helping the merchants in the downtown to maybe market and promote Brand Boulevard as it's the key street in the downtown area. So a variety of ideas that we have that we will be bringing back to the Commission. But first we wanted to discuss the hours of operation. So this is something to keep in mind in terms of the Commission decides to change the hours of operation, in terms of recommending the changes. It will have a fiscal impact in terms of a reduction in the revenue. We're still generating revenue, but it depends on what hours of operation that you recommend, and accordingly that would change the hours, the revenue numbers. So with that, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, we are recommending at this point, we've only have installed the meters and the hours for 6 months. We would like to recommend to the Commission that we continue this hours of operation for an additional 6 months. So we have a 1 year of data. Keep in mind that in the surface lots, we're going to install the multi-space meters. We believe that could also change the parking activity in the surface lots as well. Some of the lots, like Lot 6, which is behind Portos, we're going to change that to a 4-hour operation instead of a 3-hour operation, because we know there are customers who want to go to Portos or go to some of the restaurants at night, and they also go to the Center Theater. And that may require 4 hours of parking. So we're changing that, but we didn't change that because we have single head meters in that. So we're recommending the Commission to keep the hours of operation as is for another 6 months until 12. After 12 months, we come back to you with a report on the occupancy. We'll attempt to, again, to do a survey and see what the merchants think about the changes that have been made, and then accordingly get a Commission recommendation and go to City Council. That's our recommendation tonight. Whatever recommendation Commission makes, we will be presenting that recommendation to the City Council in July. Our goal is in the 3rd week of July to present this to the Commission. With that, Mr. Chairman, I believe that we have some merchants in the attendance that if Commission wishes, you can have them speak first, or I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have now.
Thank you, Mr. Bertanian. Would you like to hear first what the public would like to say? Okay. Sure. I have 2 cards. First speaker on this agenda is Eric Olson.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission, my name's Eric Olson. I am the president of the Downtown Glendale Merchants Association, and I'm a consumer. And we have been working with the city for over 5 years on the concept that is embodied in what is going on now. I am frankly delighted by the fact that I can drive down Brand Boulevard and have a realistic expectation of finding a parking place somewhere reasonably close to where I would like to be. That was never the case before. The sad thing about life is everybody loves free parking on the street out in front of the store, but it never works out that way. I'd like to, because apparently the matter that's going to receive the most consideration at this is the question about when do you cut off the evening hours. And so I'd like to discuss the concept is why are we talking about evening hours that go to about 10 o'clock. The downtown merchants, including our board, including representatives of Portos and Damon's, who are the affected kinds of merchants, the reality is that what has a tendency to happen is around 5 or 6, you have a number of people who are employed, particularly at places like restaurants, who are about to come on duty. And If you cut off, say, at 6 o'clock, it is a very easy thing for those people to fill up the parking places that you were hoping would be open and available to the customers. And it's with that idea in mind, and frankly, this was very forcefully set forth to us by Patrick Campbell of Damon's, a long experienced restaurateur, and Harry Hall, who had Milano's before unhappily he lost his lease, echoed the idea that unhappily large numbers of employees who would be coming on duty would use up all the evening parking. If you saw the graphs, you saw that the numbers of available parking spaces in the evening are dramatically improved. It's with that in mind that as people get more fully acquainted with the parking options available to them, the free parking in the garages, the other aspects of the parking thing, that we ought to continue the present at least until the end of the 1-year review period. We noted in the survey that at least half of the people are satisfied with it as it presently is. If there is anybody who feels seriously offended by these hours, somehow they have never, over the at least 5 or 6 years that we have been talking about this at the Downtown Glendale Merchants Association, including in the past 2 or 3 months since it came up at the council meeting, we've never had any such people come and complain to us. We support the report of the staff. If there are any questions, I'd be delighted to address them.
Anybody?
Just one comment. You couldn't have said it any better. Very nice.
Thank you.
I have a quick question, Mr. Olson.
Yes.
Out of those 110 businesses, how many of them belong to your association?
Of the ones that were surveyed, I'm not sure that anybody made any attempt to correlate the people that were interviewed. Our association is open. Our meetings are open to anybody, citizen or business person who wants to come.
So, as of today, beside Porto's and Damon's, how many of them are actively belong to your association?
In all honesty, I can't give you a number. Our treasurer could. We probably have 15 or 20 people who actually paid the money. Businesses who've actually paid the money. We have other people who come who have not paid the money to become dues-paying members.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Next speaker, Priscilla Hoffer.
Hello, good evening. I'm Priscilla. I'm actually a store manager for Starbucks Coffee Company at 114 North Brand Boulevard. Our store has been there for about 17 years on Brand, and I've been the store manager for 3. And I'm very, very happy to be here tonight with everyone to discuss the parking. And honestly, we have had problems. Obviously, coffee company, everyone comes early in the morning on their way to the freeway to go ahead and pick up a cup of coffee. December, the ambassadors did come, and that was not good at all. What happened at my store was a gentleman was standing right in front of my store telling my customers, "You must pay or you're going to get a ticket." I just watched people not even get out of their car. They would just get back in and leave. And ever since then, in January, my business has dropped 15%. And it's not because of the economy either. My biggest thing is I do understand the gentleman ahead of me. I believe he's right. 8 p.m. would probably be an okay time, not 6, because I do understand businesses, the workers do park on Brand. But I believe that also we can maybe change instead of 6 a.m. to even 8 or 9 a.m. Because, in all honesty, if you think about all the businesses on Brand, most of them open around 10 or 11. Subway, myself, Porto's, The other coffee house right next door, they just changed their name. We open 6, I open at 5, a.m. in the morning, and I don't have my business anymore. I don't have any customers coming in anymore in the morning. I used to be packed. Now people do not want to pay, or either they're getting ticketed, which is not very good either. I get a lot of complaints about tickets. Some of them have been complaining that they are paying at the meter and they're still getting a ticket from the police officer. And that happened today at 11:10 a.m. And a customer came in and complained to me about it. And it's also happened with one of my employees who just stopped in really quickly. She wanted to pay. She wanted to just get her paycheck and stuff like that. And she was trying to pay at the meter, and the lady was giving her a ticket. She had to stop her. So I don't know what else to say, but I really, really would hope that you guys can maybe change the hours from like 8 to 8 or even 9 to 8 or anything of the sort, because a lot of businesses, even around there, don't open till later. And the business buildings, they already have parking, like across the street. Their businesses pay for them. And it's not any of that. I know, like up the street, they had problems, like the 300 block of North Brand. Their employees were parking in front, and I was told that, and she couldn't control it. And we shouldn't suffer because of that. So I just want you guys to take in consideration maybe even just expanding it 8 a.m. to like 8 p.m.
Thank you.
So, any questions?
Yes, just one question. Technically, what you're asking for is free parking 6 a.m. to 8 a.m. for your customers.
Yes. Just to come on in really quick, right before they hit the freeway, just to grab a cup of coffee, because they're going to be stuck in traffic a little bit, and then they can just go to work.
That's it.
Are you on brand?
114 North Brand.
Any other comments? Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions to staff?
No questions, but I'm ready for comments, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Sure.
Okay. You have questions?
Just a brief question for staff. The chart you have in the staff report of the Brand Boulevard parking survey showing the available spaces before and after meters, do you by any chance have any equivalent information for the other downtown meters, the non-brand meters?
No, we have not done that survey. The reason we haven't done that survey is because first, when we implemented the hours of operation, we did that at the time we did this survey. We didn't have all the other areas on-street meters changed to those same hours of operation. So they would have been a situation, some streets were converted, some streets were not converted. So we did not conduct the survey. But I would say that depending on where those meters are, for example, Broadway, at Louise, in that area in front of the post office, it is very busy early in the morning till about 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. The post office is one of the major generators in that block. What is going on in that block right now, we have Hollywood Studios, that is being a new business that's going into corner of old Social Security building, Social Services building at the corner of Louise and Broadway. That is almost a 24-hour operation once it begins, very similar to their operation which is on Lexington, where they are. Along Broadway, their new residential development has just been completed and their condos are on sale. So that block, technically, we hope there's going to get a lot more activity in the next 6 months or so. And I think some of those streets we can revisit and say whether or not those hours of operation is appropriate for those streets, whether it's the early hours or the late hours, that we need to change that. One thing our goal was, with staff recommended to council and the commission, is that we try to be as consistent as we can. So if we're going to change the hours of operation to 8 p.m., for example, we do it citywide for the sake of the customer. So one street doesn't have 10 p.m., one street has 8 p.m. We used to have a variety of hours of operation, so people get confused. They think it's longer, they can park there longer, whereas the time changed. the hours change, so it impacts them. So that's really why we're recommending to keep the hours for now for another 6 months. We can do a better job of better survey of all the streets as well as the lots. Once we put the multi-space meter, that will give us a better indication to change some of these blocks, the hours, restrictions, and so on and so forth, and come back to the commission.
Okay, thanks.
I have a quick question, Mr. Vartanian. Out of those 110 businesses, how many of those businesses open at 6 a.m.?
6 a.m.
Right.
If you give us a minute, Tad will give you that number. I know 16 are closed at 6 p.m. The rest, how many are open, I will have that. About 2 or 3 that are open early in the morning. The problem with Brand has been, especially as you go to the northerly block, 300 and 400 block, is the office building employees that are parking on street early in the morning, because most of these businesses, some start at 6 a.m., some start at 7, and so on. So we're on those areas where you get a lot of these employees parking. In addition to the short-term or part-time employees that are working at the coffee places or they're working in the bakeries, those are the ones take advantage of that early morning space availability because nobody's parking there. And they park there until 9 a.m. or beyond. Now that the meters are in place, at least at 9 a.m., they're going to have to pay. So potentially they move their car and then go into the parking structures, or they go to residential streets and park there.
Okay. And the last speaker spoke about a customer of hers put the money and the customer still got a ticket. Do they get a receipt or they don't get a receipt?
They get a receipt and it's time stamped. So if anybody has a situation like that as soon as they paid, they got a citation, they can protest the citation, and the police department will look into it. And because we know exactly the time that ticket was issued and the time where the citation is issued, this is all automated, so you can compare the time. So if they paid before the citation, technically that shouldn't happen. I don't know what the situation was. That shouldn't happen because the parking enforcement officers, they have online, they see what spaces haven't been paid.
Right.
So they can go online and in their vehicle and they see what spaces haven't been paid. And that's where they go cite. They do not drive around anymore in the on-brand or in the lots. They will do that same thing. They just see which space numbers have not been paid, and they can go cite it. They always are lenient because they know exactly what time that space was vacated also.
And the last question, because I've been hearing complaints about those meters, they only accept coins or the credit card. Is there any way that they can also accept bills?
When we purchase them, we have that capability that we can have dollar bills or $5 bill accepted. The issue becomes change, number one. You have to put a lot of change in the machine and start giving change. That's number one. Number two, with all the machines that are in the parking industry, every city that operates them, they do not want to have dollar bills because people feed in dollar bills that are all crumbled or they're wet, for example, and they insert them and there's nothing but problems from a maintenance standpoint, and the machine jams. And that's the reason we didn't want to have dollar bills accepted by the machine, but we do have the capability. The most common way of paying right now is coins and debit cards. Almost 37% of our transactions are occurring using debit cards, and it's growing. In the industry, people are getting more comfortable with it. Plus, we're also going forward, and we are going to try pay by phone, so that once you set up an account, and from your cell phone, all you have to do is call that account number, punch in your space number, and it's paid. You don't have to do anything. You don't even have to put money in the meter or use your debit card. And that's becoming much more common with the parking users.
Okay, and those parking spots have a sensor below, so if a car leaves...
No, they don't.
Okay.
There is technology, we're looking at it right now, that it will actually give you occupancy. In other words, there's a sensor at the time a vehicle parks in that space. It will tell you that that space is occupied. And right now, all we know is that space has it been paid or not, because it goes by the space number in the
Right.
machine's computer, and then it goes to our website, and we can see which spaces haven't been paid. We don't know how many of those are occupied or not. We just know if they're not being paid. So there is technology becoming available that once we test it and we know it works, we can add that to the system also.
Okay. And just came to my mind, you spoke about Hollywood Studios, I believe,
Yes.
on Broadway next to the Social Security
Office.
building. Right. Do they have a parking structure underneath on that building?
No,
Or they don't?
that building never had off-street parking. They had some parking in the back that was taken up as part of an agreement in the developing that parking facility. They agreed to pay for parking in the marketplace garage and the exchange garage. So then they also had some exceptions, but majority of all their employees will be buying monthly parking in the marketplace or the exchange garage.
And that
Part of
is-
an agreement that was approved by council.
Okay, and that business is 24 hours?
The
Or something?
type of business it is it's a virtual studio. So movie studios actually rent a virtual studio for a period of time that they are doing a shooting of some sort. And so it's done around the clock.
Okay.
The same way as the one which is on Lexington.
And regarding this survey that the city has done, this is most businesses are on brand, right? We didn't do any survey on Central or on Orange.
No, we did not do that. The direction we received from council was primarily on Brand Boulevard, so in the time frame that we had, we just concentrated on Brand Boulevard because on Central, we already have meters. Not every block, but we have meters. The only thing changed on Central was the hours of
That's right.
operation. On Brand, we didn't have the meters, and the times also changed. So we just concentrated on Brand Boulevard. That was the direction council gave us, so we focused on Brand only.
Because the reason I ask is, have you seen any, does the city know how many of them, monthly, how many of customers park on Central or on Brand? or on Orange? Because the
on
hours are the
street?
same.
On street?
Right.
Again, similar to Brand, based on our field checks, we have seen that we have reduction in on-street parking during the early morning hours. The daytime hours are somewhat similar to Brand. It didn't change because we already had meters there. Brand made a big difference because there were no meters. At night, Central has, there are more spaces available on Central because most of the businesses there are not like, you don't have as many restaurants or bakeries
Right.
or coffee
Very cool.
places on Brand. Most of them are more business-oriented, operating from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. But as part of our further evaluation, in 6 months, we attempt to look at the parking occupancy on Central also, as well as Glendale Avenue and Broadway.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair, I have a follow-up question to one of your questions. Regarding putting money in the meters, is there a grace period that you're allowed, like 5 minutes of time or 2 minutes or something like that, from when you get out of your car and are walking to the meter where you put in the money? For some spaces, it's, 100 feet, 150 feet, for some people, it might take them a little while to walk if they're...
The way we installed the multi-space meter, I would say you're about 4 parking spaces away from each pay station. And you can pay at any of the pay stations. So, according to the industry standard, you can put one of these pay stations for every 10 to 12. We decided so that we don't have that kind of an issue to go with almost every pay station is about 4 spaces away from a parking space, the maximum. You can go to either side and pay that. There might be a
80, 90 feet maximum.
Yeah, maximum. Each parking space is about 10 feet. The width of the space is about 10.
Is that all? Okay.
9.5, 10. So you're about 40 feet away.
Okay.
But it may take you some time. You getting putting stuff in the car or getting things out of the car, and you're walking to a pay station. If in that case a person is in the process of paying, they get a citation at that point, they always, most of our police officers are very lenient and they will show the ticket that within a 2-minute window, the citation was issued while they were actually paying their space. there could be a situation, there's no grace period. They go by the machine and shows that your time has been expired, so they write the citation. There's really not a grace period in place. And they will look also, as Tad mentioned to me just now, they will also look and see if somebody is paying at the parking for that parking space if they're writing a citation. Most of the time, the enforcement officer is dealing with 1 or 2 spaces because the compliance is very, very high right now. Whereas people are actually paying for their meters. At the beginning, we in fact issued just warning notices. When we first implemented, we did not cite people. We were giving them warning notices so that, if you don't, it's the first time you're using the pay station or you didn't know you have to pay. Those are an indication about the ambassadors. I don't know how it was said to the customer. We were telling all our ambassadors to be very cordial, inform them that now you have to pay on brand before you go in, to a business or something. Make sure that they know how to operate the machine, assist them when they're putting money in it if they don't know how to operate it. And we had a very good experience with that, and we extended it for a period of 3 months almost. But there's no question that there might be a situation that you may have somebody's paying and they may get a citation, but that's been very rare.
Okay, thank you. Any comments? Who would like to start first? Mr. Welsh?
I definitely agree with staff that I don't see any reason at this point to make any changes in the hours of operation. I think that's, the results are exactly what we had planned and hoped for to accomplish. I think that having more on-street parking for the short-term transitory customers was the goal. Getting more people into the garages was the goal. Both of those things seem to have been accomplished. So I don't see any reason to change it so quickly out of the box. I definitely think that there are things to look at, once we've got some time to review, real statistics and real data. I, for one, would like to take a look at the impact of the Americana changing to free parking, during weekdays. Maybe that's something we need to, take a look at for the city garages as well. But again, that's something that we can look at in the 12-month look back, as well as, possibly recommending a grace period for the people so that they have at least a minute or 2 minutes to get to the meters. And of the only thing that I might consider at that point, of course, we'd have to weigh all the data, but changing the early morning hours, I think that chart showing 65% availability of parking spaces in the 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. slot tells me, maybe we could, change the hours in that time slot. But certainly, backing from 10 p.m., I wouldn't be in favor of that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Sarkin?
I echo my colleague. The advantages and benefits by far outweigh any negative impact. The plan is working fine at this time, and if we have this vision of a vibrant downtown until midnight on weekends or weekdays, we need turnover. That's the bottom line. I avoid downtown, Old Town Pasadena because of the parking situation there, honestly, on weekends. The plan is working fine. It is encouraging mass transit and the usage of public transportation, which I'm a big proponent on that. The city parking lots, the occupancy rate is very high. Brand Boulevard Business Association is backing the plan, and they want to keep the hours the same. As far as the ambassadors, I personally experienced the problem, and they were doing a favor to the public after the grace period that was given to them to get them accustomed with the new metering system. Now, you can tell somebody that, sir, if you don't pay, you're going to take a ticket, and they can be taken back and offended. But as far as I'm concerned, they're saving them a $60, $70 ticket. Of course, they need to be cordial, and what I experienced, it was first class. I'm going to stop it at that. A couple of more comments that I will make to staff in staff comments at the end, as far as the grace period, walking to the meters or not. But overall, all in all, my position is the same as Commissioner Welch.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sakin. Mr. Weissman?
Okay. I would. I want to get a drink here. Let's see. I would agree with my colleagues that the changes have had the desired results. It sure seems to be the indication for the availability, as well as the increases in the parking lots. And I recall after the last time we discussed this issue, there were a number of letters to the editor printed in the Glendale News Press from people complaining about it. And at that time, I wrote a community commentary saying, well, nobody came down to the commission and talked to us about this to express a contrary opinion. So I did want to thank the Starbucks manager for coming down and speaking to us, at least give us a chance to hear some other opinions on the subject. Of course, the problem we're faced with is we can't really do piecemeal kind of changes. What we're doing is going to affect parking in downtown as a whole, and given the success that we seem to be having so far, I don't think I'm inclined to make any changes at this time. If this is going to be coming back to us again in 6 months, as you said, we will have another opportunity to make adjustments as we see fit. I was concerned about the Lot 6 time being extended to 4 hours, and I know there were several city council members that expressed that concern, so I think that's a good idea, and want to see how that works out. And I'm also interested in seeing these numbers again after all the meter replacements are done and we sort of have a more homogeneous coverage with the meters. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Weissman. Mr. Merhabian?
I have no comments.
Okay. As far as for me, I understand my colleagues' reasoning for this, but also come from the public point of view. Before I make my conclusion, I forgot to ask one question to staff. Are these meters programmable, Mr. Bagdanian? Can they be programmable in certain hours for half an hour and then in certain hours
Yeah,
for 1 hour?
we can pretty much do everything we want to in terms of different hours of the day. You can have different time limits, morning versus afternoon. You can do that. You can have different rates at different times of the day. So it's very, very flexible. It's programmable, depending on what you're looking for.
Well, for that stuff, okay, then I would say if there was a chance just in the morning to change the hours, I know it affects the revenues and so forth, and maybe compromise on the closing business hours. And I do understand, based on this survey, 50% of them don't close at 10 p.m. Out of 84 businesses that were surveyed. So my preference would have been maybe in the morning at 7 and maybe close at 8 or even 9. But 7 to 8 will be more reasonable from my take on this. So that's where I'm coming from.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
Sure.
I want to make a motion to support staff's recommendation and keep the hours as is.
I will second that motion.
Okay. Then let's have a roll call, please.
Commissioner Meravian,
I deny the motion.
Commissioner Sahakian,
Yes.
Commissioner Weissman,
Yes.
Commissioner Welch,
Yes.
Chairperson Salayan.
No. All right, thank you. Next item.
Item 6, public hearing. Item 6A, report regarding application for an owner's permit to operate taxi cab service in the city of Glendale. At 6A1 is a motion to approve the application with findings for an owner's permit to operate one taxi cab vehicle in Glendale by United Taxi of Southwest, Inc., DBA United Taxi of Glendale. At 6A2 is a motion to deny the application for an owner's permit to United Taxi of the Southwest, Inc., DBA United Taxi of Glendale.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Bedanian.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Transportation Parking Commission, in May of this year, we presented the Transportation Parking Commission a report on taxi cabs, how we regulate taxi cabs in Glendale, that we have a cap of 82 permits that we issue every year, up to 82 permits that we issue. Each cab company that is currently operating on an annual basis, they have to come in and renew their permits. Currently, from the 82 permits that are available, there's 81 of them have already been taken essentially by the existing operators that are listed in the staff report. And in the May Commission meeting, staff presented a report on overall on the taxi operations and regulations. We recommended at the time that possibly, because we only have one permit, that we reduce the cap from 80 to 81 and keep it that way based on our survey of the need for additional taxi services in Glendale, whether or not the existing operators were not meeting the demand, or we had a lot of complaints about them, or there was additional businesses that was operating or started in Glendale, including the Americana, that would have generated more taxi trips. Our survey indicated that there are not as many taxi trips that are requested from the Americana, and as a result, we felt that what we have today, and it serves the needs of the Glendale residents at this point. However, the Commission, after receiving input from the existing operators, from the applicant today, United Taxi of Southwest Incorporated, doing business as UITD, had submitted an application for requesting operating 70 taxi cabs in Glendale. Obviously, since the Commission kept the cap the same, there's only one permit that can be allocated to this company for their operation. They indicated to staff, to the Commission, that they're willing to take that one permit, still apply for it, even though they want additional permits to operate. We have processed their application. United the Taxi of Southwest is a reputable company. They have been in business since 2005. They operate in a number of other cities, and we have checked their application. They have insurance that obviously once they are permitted to operate, the insurance would have to be verified by the city. They have the training process that's required for their drivers. The vehicle that they are providing does not conflict. The color and the logo of the vehicle will not conflict with the existing operators. We have not received any violations, complaints about them, obviously, because they're not operating in Glendale. They have provided 10 written professional references. What the municipal code requires in section 5.84.103 is that they meet the company that is applying for these permits, they have to meet the public convenience and necessity, and the code specifies ability of the current operators to perform service. So technically, if the current operators are not meeting the needs of the community, then a new applicant can demonstrate that they can. Effects of multiple service providers. Is it a good idea to have several companies operate in the community, or you need only few cab operators? We provided the Commission at your last Commission meeting cities that have a variety. Some city of Los Angeles have multiple operators. Some cities only have one operator. Some cities have two operators. So what you're looking at is depending on what fits best for the needs of your community. Is there additional growth anticipated, and did that growth generate additional transportation needs? Has that been met? Based on our survey, it doesn't appear that there's additional need for taxi cab transportation in the downtown area. Does the applicant provide any innovative, creative services that are unique to them, whether they are compressed natural gas vehicles or hybrid vehicles, which they are offering, they can offer. Existing operators also have the same. And complaints against the existing operators is such that we definitely look into that. And we demonstrated that the existing operators between 2006 and 2009, for the period of 3 years, we've had only 17 complaints. And that wasn't a type of complaint that we felt that did not meet the current needs of the services that needs provided in the city of Glendale. So staff is recommending that at this point that the commission does not provide the additional permit, because we don't think with one cab permit you can provide an efficient operation serving Glendale. Usually most of the operations we've seen, at the minimum they have somewhere between 5 to 10 cabs that are provided by a taxi cab operator in a region. And if that operator is also licensed in multiple cities, that's also an advantage, because then they can go to other cities to pick up passengers. The fact that if we set a precedent that any company that drops passengers in Glendale should have a permit to pick up a passenger in Glendale, then we're going to be looking at multiple other taxi cab operators throughout this region that operate in other cities. Not necessarily every cab operator that picks up a passenger in a city that they're permitted and drops them, let's say in Long Beach, not necessarily have a permit to operate in Long Beach. They drop them off and they return. If they're authorized to only pick up at airports, they pick up at the airports, they deliver their passengers to their destination. So at this point, that's our recommendation. However, the Commission has the authority to consider staff recommendation. The applicant is present here. We would recommend that the applicant make a presentation to the Council to present their case as to why they should be considered. And I believe we, as part of our requirements, we also notify all the existing operators to be present so they can provide the Commission with their version of what they think should occur in Glendale. We have included 2 motions for Commission's consideration. One motion says that we deny the application. The second motion, if you deem so necessary, you can approve that one permit. So you have both motions available for your consideration. I'll be happy to answer any more questions. I believe we have the applicant and other operators here present to make a presentation to the Commission if they so wish.
Thank you, Mr. Vakayan. I will go with the public first on this item, unless my commission has any questions. No? Mr. Martin Shatakian.
Good evening, and thank you very much for this opportunity to speak. Martin Shatakian from GNS Transit and Tri-City Transportation Systems, General Manager. And good afternoon. GNS Transit Management Incorporated, DBA City Cab and Tri-City Transportation System, DBA Yellow Cab and Checker Cab, performance is 91% on time, meaning orders were served in 0 to 15 minutes. The taxi cab business in Glendale is down 19.62%, and this comparison comes from first 6 months of 2008 and first 6 months of 2009, and it shows that number of the taxi cab orders went down from 54,423 to 43,745. We did not receive complaints for that for 6 months of this year, either about the response time or quality of service. Currently, there are 5 companies licensed in the city of Glendale: Bell Cab, Checker Cab, City Cab, Yellow Cab, and People's Taxi. People's Taxi is owned by Georgia Enterprises Incorporated and competing with remaining 4 companies. These 4 companies are competing among each other as well for business, and our owner-operator, independent contractor drivers are also competing with each other for business. All these companies have the same rate, taximeter rate, and when it comes to competition of cab companies, companies in Glendale, it is strictly about competition in providing service and being professional, not offering lower taximeter rates. All our drivers are local residents. Most of them live in Glendale. They service the city of Glendale for more than a decade, know the specifics of taxi business in Glendale, know most of the customers by name, and know where they live, and know their special needs. The reason we are never late for the services is because of our excessive knowledge of the city, both for the major and tiny streets, businesses, and developments around Glendale and in the city of Glendale. Bringing a new company into Glendale will not add any additional taxi business, and the statements of that other company that they will create additional business in the city by doing advertising are completely false. Taxi business in city of Glendale already well over-marketed and distributed between current taxi cab operators. There is no additional taxi cab business to be created in city of Glendale. Therefore, if taxi business is diluted by giving a license or licenses to newcomers, our drivers will not be able to make a living. Our drivers will not make enough money to survive, which will lead for the quality of business, of service to decrease. Drivers will not have enough money to maintain their vehicles appropriately, and that will lead to safety issues, and we are extremely concerned about that. Please don't forget that majority of our drivers live in Glendale. They spend their money in Glendale for shopping, buying gas, paying for mechanic shops, and buying food. They are paying their mortgages for the houses they bought in Glendale. That is not the case with United. Every dollar they are going to make in Glendale is going to be exported and spent in Los Angeles or other cities, not in Glendale. In his letter, the president of United Taxi of Southwest states that his company has an authority to operate in city of Pasadena for 50 licenses. It is a public record that United Taxi of Pasadena actually obtained these permits for city of Pasadena almost a year ago, maybe a little more than a year ago. How come they still don't have even one single taxi cab actually licensed and operating in Pasadena? The answer is simple. There is no need and necessity for additional cabs in Pasadena. Same situation we have in Glendale. Maybe United management doesn't want to agree with this fact, but obviously United owner members are smarter and more informed about the fact of absence of need and necessity in Pasadena, and that is why none of them is agreeing to put a cab in Pasadena in service, especially after United requests to pay $7,000 for the license to United Taxi of the Southwest, each license for each spot. United did charge $7,000 to their owner operators for each taxi cab license in city of Burbank. For 20 licenses, United collected $140,000 from owner operators, net profit for United. I don't think it will be fair to give an opportunity to United to play the same game in Glendale. I don't think it is fair to give them licenses so the management of United can turn around and sell them, and I'm highlighting this word, to owner members for net profit. We do care about, can I have a couple of more seconds?
Sure.
We do care about our reputation in Glendale. We never gave our licenses in Glendale or Burbank, gave up our licenses in Glendale or Burbank and Pasadena. We are the proven reliable taxi cab service provider in Glendale for 12 years. We do have the correct number of the cabs and drivers to meet the need and necessity for taxi cab service in Glendale, and we are doing a good job. We are providing on-time, safe, and professional service and not receiving any complaints for the job we do. By the way, for your information, I'm also managing San Gabriel Transit City Cab, and this company is franchised in City of Los Angeles with 166 taxi cabs. The performance we are providing, on-time performance, somewhere between 87 to 89%. And San Gabriel Transit City Cab is one of the best performers in City of Los Angeles. The good news for City of Glendale is that GNS Transit and Tri-City Transportation System Incorporated are actually providing higher performance, higher than whatever the average is in Los Angeles. We're providing 91% on-time performance service to residents. For the sake of public interest, for protecting public interest, we are urging this Commission not to approve United application for any number of the taxi cab licenses in Glendale. We are urging you to maintain the status quo during these hard-to-survive economic times, and any licenses given to United will lead to disaster for our drivers. Thank you, and I'll be available for your questions either now or later.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Jonathan Chrisman.
Give you credit for pronouncing my last name correctly. Thank you, sir. Honorable Chairman Solian, members of the commission. I'm not going to go through and repeat what my competitor has said. He's right to a great degree about our service levels. I represent People's Taxi, 1157 East Green Street, Pasadena. We operate 35% of the available permits in the city of Glendale. And that being said, I'm going to, number one, commend the staff for developing what is probably the most comprehensive expose, if you will, for demonstrating need necessity. I have not read anything this comprehensive in a long, long time, and the staff, I think, is to be commended for a highly intelligent perspective on need necessity. That being said, I'm going to draw you a small picture about how, in the doctor's Hippocratic oath that says do no harm, how one cab licensed by itself could be detrimental to service within the city, to our citizens here. If a cab driver drops off, say, at Chevy Chase Country Club, and then gets a call, that same single cab driver, to go to the library at Stockard and Brand, I can guarantee you, the city has a dozen cars a lot closer to that pickup point than this one cab driver can compete with. If this one cab driver gets that call, it's going to take a long time to get there. And who's going to suffer but that customer? One cab can hurt service far, far more than he can help service. You just can't get to where you have to go if you're one cab. I hope that demonstrates to you kind of a scenario that can take place that's detrimental to the citizens of Glendale. It cannot compete with one permit. It just isn't economically correct. It is not. It's going to be a catastrophe for that driver who may or may not choose to even go to that pickup at Brand and Stockard because he knows he's too far away. So that person just waits and waits and waits. I'm in support of the recommendations by the staff simply because they are logical, they are honest, and they're accurate. There are many, many reasons why this should not happen. It's not against the spirit of competition. It's just that one permit doesn't work. It does not do anything for the customer. In fact, it can work to the negative. Thank you so much for your time. Any questions whatsoever, I'd be happy to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Sheldon Baker.
Good evening. I'm Sheldon Baker, and I'm the attorney for Tri-City and GNS. We agree with the staff report, and we urge that you deny the application. Glendale Municipal Code, Section 5.84.100, requires the applicant to prove by a preponderance of the evidence that public convenience and necessity requires the operation of the vehicle listed in the permit application. In short, does the public convenience and necessity require the addition of one permit being granted? We would say and agree with staff there has not been showing of public convenience and necessity that would require the addition of the permit being issued. Other cities such as Pasadena do not have similar requirements, and permits are more readily available. Among other matters, the Glendale codes require that you look at, among other things, the number of taxi cabs already in operation, whether existing taxi cab transportation is adequate to meet public convenience and necessity, and the probable effect of increased service on local traffic conditions. Plus, they require you to look at all the other items cited in the staff report. Staff states the applicant has not satisfied the required showing and recommends denial. We agree. There's talk of competition. There is existing competition already. Two separate entities already exist, as you've heard. Further, the drivers themselves compete among themselves who can be better. Competition by a third entity will not further competition. It will only cause harm. Please realize the fares are not reduced or affected by more companies. The drivers are independent contractors. They only make money if they get fares and take good care of their passengers. However, now there are fewer customers today than in recent periods because of the economy. The drivers have to work longer and harder to make a living. To add even one more cab on the street makes it even more difficult for the drivers to survive. If the drivers have to work harder and longer hours, then you run the risk of exposure to safety, to maintenance, to more pressures to earn a living. There are only so many passengers to go around, and there is already an abundance of cabs. To add another cab threatens to destroy the livelihood of drivers. Why would you want to do that? Drivers survive only by the rides, not just by sitting in their cab. They need passengers. Airport traffic is down. Thank heavens that we have a new hotel or the Americana, but that only offsets some of the losses. People are not spending and they're not traveling as much. Please respect the drivers and their need to survive and to work reasonable hours. Keep in mind, many of those drivers, as you've heard, live in Glendale. They shop in Glendale. They're hardworking individuals. They have mortgages to pay, mouths to feed. Further, as to harm an additional cab can cause, it adds to existing congestion and pollution. All total, we would say to you, it is not worth it. The cost to Glendale, to the public, to the existing companies, and to the drivers is too costly to justify the addition of an additional license. We also would point out the new company would have only one cab in Glendale. They can't serve this city with one cab. What if two calls come in at the same time? Only one call can be answered. That affects the customer satisfaction, the waiting time, and reflects on the city and the existing other operators. If the cab is at one part of the city and a call comes from another part, how do they get to that customer? Either the time is extended or the customer simply gives up. Neither answer is a good answer. Applicant says it has 50 permits in Pasadena, but it doesn't operate cabs in Pasadena. Even though it drops passengers off in Pasadena, why doesn't it operate cabs there? We suggest it's a lack of need and necessity. We would also ask why the applicant left Glendale after operating here for a number of years. Why now grant them a permit? The Glendale Code requires you to look at character, experience, and responsibility. You've heard that our clients pride themselves in their record. If I could finish, please. Thank you. Their cabs are well maintained. Their on-time pickup and delivery rate is phenomenal. My client serves Glendale well. Applicant does not give sufficient evidence demonstrating the need for additional service. Applicant says in its papers they drop thousands and thousands of people in Glendale. And then they try to justify a need in order to take those people back outside of Glendale. However, what they neglect to say is that that's the similar case for all cab companies who drop passengers in cities in which that cab company doesn't have permits. They can drop the passengers, they just can't pick up passengers in that city. It's true for the existing operators in this city when they go and drop a passenger in a city in which they don't have permits. They have to come back. it also neglects to say that's the nature of the cab business. More important is what actually happens in these instances of where a non-permitted cab comes and drops somebody off in Glendale. What happens to those people? Bluntly, the existing cab companies take care of their needs. They handle all the needs of those people.
Mr. Baker, can you conclude, please?
I will. As your staff report says, there are no complaints from customers who are dropped off in Glendale or from anyone else who's a rider in Glendale. In short, there's no hue and cry for more cab service. The existing permits and companies work well and serve our needs. Please deny the request, and I'll be available for any questions you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Baker. Our next speaker is Neil Evans.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Neil Evans. I'm attorney for the applicant. I spoke in front of you, about 2 months ago, where we were dealing with the issue of how many permits and whether to delete the one permit. And I think there was quite a lively and extended discussion at that time. And you did move to maintain that one permit, knowing that our application would come before you. We are limited as a practical and legal matter to that one permit. And the issue, I guess, is the other parties doth protest too much, using a phrase from some famous person that I can't recall. Maybe it was Socrates or someone else. The fact that they are protesting one permit, as I think one of them used, it might be a disaster, that if you allow this one permit on the road, kind of highlights what is really going on here. It is an attempt by essentially a monopoly to prevent any competition. And how do we know that? How do we know it's really a monopoly? I am an attorney for multiple cab companies, and I was last month in San Bernardino, where we were fighting against Mr. Martirosian's cab fleet in San Bernardino for 2 cabs. And the interesting thing is People's Taxi saying, well, we're owned by a different company. We have nothing to do with Mr. Martirosian. Well, Mr. Chrisman was the representative of Timmy's group in San Bernardino. First at an administrative hearing that lasted hours and hours and hours, where we're fighting over 2 cabs in San Bernardino. We ultimately went in front of the city council last month, and they said, we want competition. We only have one other company, and even though it's only 2 cabs, that is a start, and that's what we have available. Their ordinance is tied to the number of residents, so it put a cap on the number of cabs that can be obtained at that time, and they said, we want those 2 cabs. We want that competition. So whether People's Taxi is claiming they're really independent of Timmy's group or not, that Mr. Chrisman is the representative of other cab companies that are owned by Mr. Martirosian, and in fact he was a representative of Mr. Martirosian's group in Burbank that fought aggressively to try to keep us out of Burbank. So there's an alignment there, but certainly the issue here about public convenience and necessity deals with the issue of variety and competition. Yes, all you can give us is 1 cab, but that is a start. And there is a reason, if you wondered, why a company that's owned by Mr. Martirosian that spreads itself out with 3 different color schemes and different names, why do they do that? Why don't they just have one common color scheme? And the reason is it creates the perception in the public, because the public doesn't know who owns these cab companies, the public doesn't know who manages them. When they call the number for one of the 3 entities, they get the same dispatch. They don't really know that. And so the public is deceived in believing that there are really 3 cab companies, that they really have a choice, when in fact they don't have a choice. It's the same management company, it's the same dispatch office, it's the same facility, and it is an effort by Mr. Martirosian's group to create the impression of competition when there really isn't any. And why are we different? Well, we are true owner-operators, and that doesn't mean that we have the drivers buy the vehicles, which is what Mr. Martirosian's group does. Actually, the people that own United Taxi of the Southwest are the shareholders, are the drivers. That is different, materially different than what the other fleet operates. They are an owned by one person, leased to other people. Yes, they buy the physical taxi, but they have no ownership interest in the company itself. And why is that significant? Because companies that are owned by the people that drive, there is a pride of ownership. There's a pride of developing the business. There's a pride of maintaining the business. They actually have to pay quite a bit of money to own that share of stock in the company. They don't just pay a few $1,000s for a police vehicle. They actually own the company, and you get a higher quality of owner, a higher quality of person who actually owns his own business and has a stake not only in the outcome of his cab, but in the outcome of the company itself. The concept that you've heard the last time and today is, well, there's competition between drivers. Well, of course, every driver wants to get as many trips as he can. And that form of competition is not the kind of competition we're talking about. What we're talking about is a different way of doing business, offering a really different dispatch, a different way of responding to the public, a different way of promoting ourselves. The suggestion by Mr. Shatakian, who used to be the president of United Independent Taxi for many years, is that, well, they're not going to be able to develop any new business. Well, then why does he use 3 different cab names to operate in the same city with the same ownership? It's because when the public has a choice, in the case of Mr. Martirosian's group, it's really not a choice. It's 3 different names and color schemes in the public believing there's a choice, but the public really needs to have a choice. So when we talk about granting our request, and again, it's only 1 cab, it's not going to have a material effect on traffic. It's not going to have a material effect on what the other cab companies do. But it is going to represent, and since I'm speaking with the applicant, if I could continue, it is going to represent a change. It's going to represent an additional true alternative to the existing operators. Not just another color scheme, but a really different operator that does things differently, that promotes itself differently. And so the public is not going to be deceived when it comes to our company. They're going to get the real deal. They're going to get a new, different company. Admittedly, only 1 cab at this point, but that's how you develop demand. We've been in the city of Glendale for many years, for about 10 years, and then years ago there was a change in who decided what would happen with those permits. But the public has some recognition for United Independent Taxi and United Taxi of the Southwest. We service over 1 million customers a year throughout Southern California. We have, Mr. Martirosian made comment to the LA fleet. Our fleet in the Los Angeles area outperforms any other company in terms of on-time service. So when we talk about...
Can you conclude?
Sure. When we talk about competition, when we talk about the benefits to the city, the motion that's proposed by the staff talks about the fact that the denial of the application would deprive Glendale residents of an additional cab company. True competition, not another color scheme or another name under the same management, but true competition. There has been no challenge to our qualifications, no challenge to our history and our ability to perform service, no issue that they've had complaints in some other jurisdiction. We are a superior cab company trying to get 1 permit, and that's how we're going to develop the demand, is by being in the city, having the recognition of that 1 cab, and ultimately we'll be able to bring the next time around people from the public. They're going to say, we like that other cab, we think there should be more of them, and that's how we're going to prove why you should have additional cabs over what you already have in terms of the limit. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker, Ms. Francine Oshin.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Francine Ocean. I'm a consultant for United Taxi. I've worked in Glendale in the past. I used to write for the Glendale News Press, and I've worked with many of your council people and transportation people over the years. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you tonight. I'm here to support the one permit to give our drivers at United an opportunity they have tried for years to get. For years. We too have drivers who live in Glendale and spend money in Glendale. We have dispatchers who live and spend money in Glendale. And I am really confused, Martin, because when we were in Burbank like 2 months ago, you said most of your drivers lived in Burbank and spent money in Burbank. They can't live in both places. We have drivers also who live here, and they want this opportunity. This is what this is about. It's not about the public convenience and necessity. You talked about that for a long time last month. You made a decision. You didn't want to add more, but you didn't want to go back to 81. You felt that 82 was the fair number. It's what you had. You have 1 permit available. It just seems to me, just a terrible thing to turn down this one application for one permit and not give this company and their drivers the opportunity to show that they can perform. They don't want a deadhead when they come out of Burbank Airport or other places. And I understand that you can make the argument, well, everybody comes in and they could make it. No one else is applying for this permit. Only one company is. It's the only one you have to consider. This is a very environmentally conscientious company. I've worked with them in the city of Los Angeles. They are a superior company. I would not be here tonight if I didn't believe in them 100%. I implore you to give them this one permit. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Oshin. This concludes. Oh, one more. Do we have any other speakers on this agenda? Okay. Our next speaker is Mr. Melis Adamu.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners. I think I have explained before, but I have to explain about United. I'm the president of United Independent Taxi and United Taxi of the Southwest. United is an association, is non-profit. We don't charge anything. Actually, if we see the amount of money that the drivers or the owners are paying to the company in the city of Los Angeles or anywhere else, it's the lowest from any company that we pay, because it is our company. We charge exactly the expense only. Every vehicle pays only $1,100 every month, LA units, and the rest go down by the area where they are working and estimated by the board of directors. When we charge all the fleets, when we have new fleets, we ask them to pay for their computers, for their antennas and so on. It is their own. It's not ours. It belongs to them. And there were other charges that we were saying that it's people who are living in Glendale, they work also at United. Majority, almost 40% of the drivers in United are Armenian-oriented, Armenians. And they live also in Glendale. We wanted to create business for them. We wanted them to pick up from here. That's what I explained last time. This is only one license, and we wanted it for the needy and the helpless people, this one license, because United is, as I said, is non-profit. We don't make any profit. We actually give a lot of incentives to the students. If you go to Burbank, you will see it. On all the cities, we give out. Whatever we make extra money, we wanted to be the community oriented. Everywhere we go, we do something for the community. That's what we are. And also the United is, we wanted to serve the citizens of Glendale. In Pasadena, we had 50 licenses. We hold it because there was a community study that will bring CNG vehicles in the city. So we told to the city that, look, if we don't want to bring the gas cars now. We wanted to wait until these cars come. If we allow us, we'll wait and we'll bring the hybrid or CNG cars. So they allowed us to wait until now. And once it's allowed, or once this is not going to be allowed anymore, then we're going to bring the regular cars or CNG or hybrid cars to the city. That's what we plan. So we are planning also in Glendale to put wheelchair accessible van that will be accommodating the needy and necessity from the hospitals, the needy and necessity from everywhere. So that will be helping Glendale. So I urge you to vote yes on this, and thank you very much.
Question before you go, Mr. Adamu. One of the issues that was brought up was the issue of multiple simultaneous calls when you only have one cab. Could you maybe briefly address how you would handle that?
What we do normally in every city, we work in every city almost from the beach to the north. Every call, when we don't have any driver, right now we are having from Glendale almost 119 calls a month. What we do is we refer it immediately to People's Taxi. If we do have two calls simultaneously, we refer one of the calls to other taxi companies. We don't hold the customer unless they say, no, we don't want People's Taxi, we'll wait for you. Unless they do that, we automatically refer. We don't hold.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any commissioner comments? Any commissioner questions to staff?
No questions, but comments, yes.
Okay, I have a question. I think this will pertain to the city clerk's office, if I can. The amount of complaints from 2006 to 2009, is this, even though it's minimal, are these complaints in the city of Glendale?
Yes, these are citizens that are making complaints in the city that are being picked up in Glendale. And out of the 17, one was they weren't taking the direct route. Some of them, most of them were discrepancies about the fees being overcharged or overcharged. And 3 of the complaints, 2 to 3 complaints were complaints on not being on time.
2 of them.
2 of them.
But this company is a new company trying to apply.
Right. We're talking about complaints on the licensed taxi cab, the existing taxi cabs in Glendale.
Okay, I was confused. Okay, I got it. Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any comments?
I have comments, yes.
Okay, Mr. Welsh.
Okay. Well, I'm certainly in favor of granting the license, and I have a number of reasons for saying that. First of all, I think that the public convenience and necessity clause, if I may, I'd like to actually read the code section, because it says, public convenience and necessity means fitting or suited to the public need. There is both a present and future apparent reasonable need for use of the service, and the public highways and public welfare are not unduly burdened by such a service. A case of public convenience and necessity exists where a transportation business is ready, able, and willing to serve the public generally without discrimination, with reasonable efficiency, at a reasonable price, and which includes the criteria set forth in sections 584-100 and 584-103. To me, that's a pretty low bar that we need to cover here in order to make the findings to allow another permit. We've already established most of the reasonableness in having the 82, so we've got somebody who's willing to come in and take that last permit, and I see absolutely no reason not to give it to them if they're willing and able to do it. I've heard some discussion that, the Americana has been open and there's been no increase from that, but the Americana is still, the residency and the people who live there is still very low. And those, to me, would be the most likely users of taxi service. And it's still only like 30 or 40% occupied. I live in South Glendale, and in South Glendale, we still have a lot of multifamily buildings being constructed on San Fernando Road, in the streets near the train station. The Glendale Triangle project is about to break ground. So I think that there's still a reasonable belief that there may be increased need, particularly in South Glendale. So with that, I'll be voting in favor of granting the permit.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Welsh. Mr. Sagan?
Yes. First, I'm going to give you a background of myself. For 3 years, I was the transportation engineer running the franchise and regulation division of the City of Los Angeles Department of Transportation. I regulated you guys. I know the game, ladies and gentlemen. Out of the hundreds of taxi cab companies that I've seen, taxi cab vehicles that I've seen, and the taxi cab companies from Valley Cab to UITD to People's Cab, I haven't seen competition improve service, honestly. And the few taxi cab vehicles that I've been into, that I've seen, that you could ride, it was because of the driver's pride in the work they were doing to keep it clean, and they liked what they were doing. So competition of one vehicle, one additional vehicle, is not going to change anything in the city of Glendale. That's number one. Number two, I've been a commissioner for 4 years now, I believe, and every time, renewal time, I've stated it very clearly that if you want additional licenses, or you're a new company, you want to apply for a license, number one, I need to see need and necessity, and I haven't seen it here. Number two, complaints need to be evaluated, and if there is tardiness and the service level is not acceptable, then this commission or I will personally look into it. I haven't seen that. Having said that, I don't think the one vehicle is going to change anything. As a matter of fact, unfortunately, I couldn't make the last meeting. My position would have been to eliminate that one permit, and my recommendation for future commissions, I will not be here, is to evaluate the number of permits, which are 82, and decrease that number. I've heard other companies speak in the past stating that we will give out some of our permits because the business is not available. So I would recommend that to staff to look into that and recommend future commissions to look into that, to decrease the number of taxi cabs. I'm going to end it. My position is to deny it and support staff's recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Sarkan. Mr. Weissman? Any thought?
Okay, well, I do agree with my colleague, Mr. Sahakian, when he said one vehicle won't make any difference. I think I may be looking at it with a slightly different perspective. And I can think of one area where one additional vehicle would make a difference, and it has to do with the diversity of ownership. And I think this was a concern that we had the first time we discussed this. And my vote was ultimately to allow the cap to remain at 82 in response to Mr. Evans' request to just let them get their foot in the door. And I agree with Mr. Evans that there will be no material effect on the addition of one cab out of 81 or 82. And I feel to be consistent with the issues and the line of reasoning that led me to vote to keep the cap at 82. I am going to support the application.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Merhabian?
I was using a cab company for a while for the last 2-3 weeks, and everybody is complaining for their income daily basis. I deny the application. For one permit, I deny.
Okay. So you're denying this
permit?
Okay. So you agree with staff then?
Yes.
As far as for me, I think Commissioner Sahakian took the words out of my mouth. I think one extra cab would not make, I don't call that competition. And I do remember, as Mr. Sahakian remembers, in the past there were numerous taxi companies, I believe 2 of them or 1 of them, came in front of our commission and requested that they have no business, the business is slow, they'd be glad to give some of their permits away, to other companies and so forth. So I would agree with staff recommendation to deny the one additional taxi cab for now. If business picks up in the future, we might change that. But as of right now, my take on this is to deny. So having said that,
I'll move the motion to deny for the additional permit.
Second. Okay. May I have roll call, please?
Commissioner Merabian?
I second it already.
No, you got to vote. Yes or no?
No on application.
Which is yes on the motion.
Well, yes on the vote, yeah.
Yes on the motion.
Commissioner Sahakian?
Yes.
Commissioner Wiseman?
No.
Commissioner Welch?
No.
Chairperson Salayan?
Yes. Okay, thank you for coming. Next item.
Item number 7, information and update. Item 7A, report on car park community meeting. Commissioner Wiseman.
Okay. Commissioner Weissman?
Okay, I wanted to present a brief report to the Commission on the neighborhood meeting that was held May 7th in the Municipal Services Building cafeteria to discuss the car park issues. I think just to try and summarize it as briefly as I can, we voted to implement preferential parking on Orange Grove Avenue, East Harvard Street, and Campus Street. There was an issue with some of the other residents in the neighborhood on Maynard Street and Carr Drive not being notified of the preferential parking and therefore not being aware of it until it was actually implemented. And once it was implemented, it basically solved parking problems for the people in the preferential district, but it exacerbated parking problems for the other folks in the neighborhood not in that district. And so the neighborhood meeting was held both to gather input on exactly what the nature of the problems was and to discuss possible solutions or mitigations. And really the biggest complaint from the folks on Maynard Street and Carr Drive is that when they come home from work in the late afternoon or early evening, they don't have any place to park on the street in front of their homes. And among the items that were suggested was that the Maynard Street and Carr Drive residents petition for preferential parking. If they're not willing or able to do that for themselves, however, that's not something the city can compel them to do, and they may possibly even have surveyed the neighbors and realized that they won't be able to get enough signatures to do this. I don't personally know if that's the case or not, but that was... Well, the other folks wish they would do that rather than have the city impose some kind of solution on them. But right now we do have a kind of an unequal situation in the parking privileges for the two blocks. Probably the solution that maybe got the highest percentage of buy-in, although none of them were really 100%, was to create a preferential community parking district similar to the Glendale Community College district. One of the factors that's kind of advantageous to that is the fact that the car park neighborhood is a very well-defined neighborhood. So it hopefully would be, the logistics involved would not be too horrible if a preferential community parking district could be implemented. One of the other solutions we talked about was the fact that there are some excess surplus parking permits that are currently not being used by the folks who do have preferential parking. And one of the proposals was to allow the Maynard Street and Carr Drive residents to purchase any excess or surplus parking. That was a little bit more controversial among some of the other neighbors. In fact, some of them started saying, oh, well, we're going to go buy up all the excess permits ourselves, just so those people can't have any. The meeting as a whole was kind of contentious, and it was a bit difficult to really achieve any consensus on any of the possible solutions. There were a number of things mentioned that probably in increasing, decreasing order of consensus. One of them was to rescind the preferential parking that was granted for Orange Grove, East Harvard, and Campus. Naturally, the people that live there are 100% opposed to that. There was mention of City Council having promised more parking spaces to be added at Carr Park, which never came to fruition. There was a fair amount of discussion about increasing the level of parking enforcement and parking fines, specifically during events at Glendale High School. And another suggestion, which is something obviously that is going to need to be budgeted for, was to have Glendale High build a parking structure. So that's probably not too likely in the near future. One item that I did think had possibility was the use of temporary movable barriers during events at the games. And I don't know if you're familiar with what they do in the neighborhood of the Hollywood Bowl when they have events at the Hollywood Bowl, but the residential streets are temporarily blocked off with wooden barriers, and they have to hire staff to be present at those barriers and only let in people that live in the neighborhood. But it would be a way of keeping out folks who are visiting for events at Glendale High. One of the things that was mentioned is that the current level of the parking fines is just seen as, the cost of parking if you're going to park at Glendale High. And so that was another suggestion, was if there was any flexibility in terms of raising parking fines or increasing restrictions, that would be a help. So in sum, the solution that probably got the highest percentage of consensus was to create a preferential community parking district. Secondarily to that would be to allow the Maynard Street and Car Drive residents to purchase excess permits if such are available. And unless you have any questions for me, I think I pretty much covered everything.
I do have one comment. As far as Hollywood Bowl, I am very familiar with blocking off the streets. Definitely, I'm going to say it live. It is illegal.
Oh.
We did get in trouble for that. It's public right-of-way. You cannot do enforcement just for the outsiders and not the residents. We got in trouble at one of the golf venues on the west side, but Hollywood Bowl, it keeps happening. It's done by residents. They do put signs that reads local access only, road closed, local access only. But in reality, if anybody wants to go and park there, he cannot be stopped.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
And correct me if I'm wrong, Sasso.
Even with permit?
No, permit is a different issue, of course.
So the folks that are staffing those barriers in the residential streets on the Hollywood Bowl, are they not?
It's a visual thing. It deters people when they see it because they...
But if I drove my car up there and said, let me in, they have to let you in?
Absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
You might want to do this tomorrow. Yes. I have a quick question to staff. I don't think, correct me if I'm wrong, regarding preferential parking, Mr. Bagdanian, is it the new latest code that we have in the books? It's block by block. If they want and it takes 75%, it's not a community blank.
Our current code goes by block,
right,
or street segments. So we don't have a district in the. We have to create one.
Right.
What we did for the Glendale Community College. So if that would be the direction we go after the committee's recommendation, and when I believe we will have to meet again with that group in the community to kind of bring it to a conclusion so that we will inform them what to do and then bring that to the Transportation Parking Commission. So if we want to form a district, staff will prepare the necessary documents or municipal code revisions to allow that district to occur. Because that has to be, that we would have to amend the municipal code.
But okay, the reason we used to have that, but we went back block by block because some neighborhoods were not interested. I think we should go block by block, and that will be a consensus. If all the street that Mr. Weissman mentioned, that will be a neighborhood. If we change the code, we were going back what we used to have. The reason we have block by block is to improve the system, where some blocks are not interested to have any type of either traffic calming or preferential parking, instead of having a blank.
When we did the Glendale Community College district, we created the district first,
right,
and then every street that wants it, if they were within the district, they will just petition and they'll get it.
I see. Okay.
It wasn't like they have to go through the process you go for a street section. Right now in the community college district, there are streets that don't want preferential parking,
right,
and there are streets that in that same district that want it. So all they do is they fill out an application and they apply for that for their street, and if they all are in favor, they'll get it. With the car park area right now, because of the supply of parking is not enough, the folks who were able to park on Campus Street, they can't park there anymore because of the hours. So they want to be able to park on campus. And so if you made it a district, then all the residents in that area, then they can use in every street. And I think that's the biggest problem. Some of the folks on one street don't want other residents on another street to park in front of their home. So that's where the differences are. But I believe once we go one more time with the community and we come up with some options and bring them to the commission, and then hopefully we can have a compromise solution. May not be the best solution, but a compromise solution.
Okay, thank you.
I have some questions, actually. Did staff see a sudden surge in buying of permits on the other streets after this meeting?
I have not seen that yet. I will have to verify. We will have that for the next subcommittee meeting. So,
Yeah, thanks for asking. I forgot to ask that.
And a follow-up to that is, can that be a legal thing to do, to sell a permit from campus for a resident on car? How would that be accomplished from a legal perspective?
Well, right now when we issue the permit, that permit cannot be transferred, cannot be sold to anybody else on another street. And that's strictly enforced, in fact, at the college area, because we've seen that. Each permit is labeled, is signed, assigned to that particular street. If we see that permit on the next street, we know that's been sold or somebody gave it to somebody else. So what we have to do, if we create a district in that area, we would have to come up with the provisions for it and how,
but this was a solution separate from creating a district.
Yeah.
This is just selling off the excess permits.
We will have to, the current code does not allow that.
So there's no precedent for doing that?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes. We have to make a provision for it. Or we may have to do that just for that area, for those specific streets, because sometimes it's better not to make it citywide, because it's very specific to that street. So we can actually name those streets that, on these streets you can buy permits, or you can assign them extra permits from one street to another resident.
And what is the parking fine right now for parking illegally in a preferential parking zone? Do you know?
Somebody mentioned $30 at the meeting, but I'm not. That's hearsay.
30.
Okay. Okay. That's all my questions.
Any comment?
I have a comment. Good job, Bill.
Yeah.
Very good work.
Yeah, somebody else can chair the next one.
I think you should be full-time on that multi-family parking committee.
Okay. Next item.
Item 8, Commission, Staff Comments, Updates.
One comment, Chair, if I may. Some of the money generated from the parking project, I would suggest it be spent on occupancy sensors, maybe, because the technology is becoming readily available, and that's going to only improve the project. Going back to the grace period, I've seen it done several ways, where parking officers or meter maids are basically directed to wait for 5 minutes once they observe a vehicle that hasn't paid. And obviously, like Mr. Bagdanian stated, that if nobody's walking to the meter station to pay, or nobody's there paying, then it means that it's a violation. But I've also seen a couple of cases where the person is saying that, well, I went inside a store to get change and come back out. So you're faced with that situation. It is a challenge. I think the way staff addressed it is 40 feet is very reasonable. Honestly, it's very close. I mean, it's from here to that exit sign probably. How many of those are we getting? How many complaints are we getting?
I don't think that's been too many, but I will definitely ask our enforcement folks. Usually we get claims. Somebody with that occurred, they will complain, and in most cases, I think once they talk to our chief of our traffic and parking division, they're pretty lenient, and then
so there's an appeal process.
Yeah, there's an appeal process, but as you said, before they cite, they look at and see if people are standing at the pay station and are paying the pay. If they're doing so, they'll wait until they pay, and then they'll check it, because they can go to the machine, they can check it in their vehicle. So one of the things we're developing also is that in certain blocks, for example, in front of Porto's, there might be a line because it's a very popular block. A lot of people are paying, but people still don't know that they can pay at any of those pay stations. So you could be you can go 5 more spaces and pay at the other one. So we are going to develop some signs that says you can pay at every pay station, and you don't have to wait in line. For that reason, also in some of the blocks, actually instead of putting 3, we put in 4, because we knew that that's a busy block. You have a lot of high turnover spaces, and it's better to have multi-space meters.
And we don't have pay by cell phone option yet, right?
We don't have that. We're checking that right now. Again, with all of these, there's you're paying for airtime, so there's a cost to that. We want to first check and see if it's really we're going to get a higher usage of it first. We may try it for 6 months and see how many people will use it. I was recently in England and in London, one section of London, it's all pay by phone. They don't even put in the pay by space. You have a sign, and it's got the phone number on it, and all of those spaces are pay by phone. So technically, you don't pay for the maintenance of the vehicle, for the collection of the fees. That's an expensive expenditure that we're doing right now. So it's pretty interesting that you don't even need to have these pay stations anymore. It's all pay by phone. So you don't have to have coins or credit cards, nothing. You just pay it and
who doesn't have a cell phone?
And exactly. And if you don't have a cell phone, then that's I guess you just have to find another parking space which has a meter. So that was interesting because that entire area of the city, Westminster, it's all paid by phone. They did not invest in installing machines.
I noticed the phone number is printed on the receipts.
Yes,
the
they
pay
are.
by phone number.
Yeah, so right now we're capable. There is a phone number. You have a ticket number. So once you sign up, you can call that toll-free number, and you will basically punch in your ticket number. Automatically, it checks it on the computer that says, you've already put money. You want to maybe increase your stay time. So let's say you're 2 blocks away and you don't want to walk back to the pay station. You can just call that number and put money on or put time on your space.
Thank you.
Any comments from the rest of the commission? No? I have some 5 basically comments or questions to ask. I know the city is working on the bike lane route. Do we know the status on that? And
Yes, I
where it's
have
gonna be exactly?
a couple of updates that I would like to inform the commission about future topics that will be coming in the next 4 months to the commission.
Okay.
So that one is one of them.
Okay. The next question will be, what is the status on the synchronizing the traffic signals that the city has control over, such as on Glendale Avenue or Central or Brent?
All of our signals in the downtown are synchronized. They're operating on a program basis, different hours of the day. So unless we know if there's a specific segment or direction of an arterial that you experience that is not working, we can check into it from our traffic operations center.
134 and Glendale Avenue, Monterey.
Okay, those 3, anything that is, all the signals that are at the freeway on and off ramps are not under our control. So to the north and south of that, you can synchronize. Once you get that, the state Caltrans operates those signals. It does not give us the authority to change the timing. We don't have that. We are going to be meeting with them now that they're looking into a way of looking at connecting the ramp metering to the ramps, traffic signals at the ramps. For example, we've been complaining to Caltrans about the Brandon Central on and off ramps because essentially we're storing the freeway traffic on the city street, and to a certain extent we were able to tolerate it, but now it's getting worse and worse as the mainline traffic gets worse. Change the ramp metering. They don't allow as many cars to get onto the freeway, so they back that up on our city streets. And that's very typical of every city that I know. They have that problem. So we're trying to come up with a compromise timing plan that, during those peak hours, we don't have that kind of the frequency of that ramp metering gets changed. We can get more people onto the freeway and less queuing onto our streets. So those are all things that we're working on. But it will not be. It may take at least another year.
All right.
Not easy to change.
Okay, yeah, I understand. Thank you. The other two questions are basically, I've received some complaints, some issues, actually not complaints and issues. The corner of Verdugo and Glendale Avenue, going south on Glendale, where there's a shopping center where there's Ralph's. Apparently, when folks want to make a left to go inside the parking of the Ralph's grocery store,
Southbound when they're going
southbound on Glendale, there's a signage that's blocking, so they don't know at what point they should stop and make a left. And also, they've been complaining that there's a median lane cement that blends in with the asphalt, so it would be nice to have either a reflector, if there is one. I'm not sure. I don't think there is one going south.
At that same location?
Yes. Or a different color during the day so they can distinguish that.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't get that
Going
point.
south on Glendale.
Southbound, what's...
Right after Verdugo.
Correct, but the pavement is blending with the asphalt? What's the issue there?
Well, at night you can't see at all, and that's what they complain.
Can't see the island, I guess?
They can't see the island at night.
I see what you're saying.
Okay,
yes.
so
I see what you're
They don't know at
Might
what
be
point they
some-
need to slow down and make a left.
Okay, we will check into that. Maybe there needs to be markers on the face of the curve around
Right.
the island
That's
to
what I'm saying.
reflect the light at night.
Correct. And
Check
the other complaint I receive is the amount of speeding that goes on Chevy Chase.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if that's true. Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. We've been hearing this for a long time, so that's one thing. And the last thing is I want to thank, I've been noticing in my area and other areas that the traffic division under Lieutenant Corporal Popolitis, they've been working until 10 o'clock at night last week on Glendale Avenue next to the freeway. And I want to thank the police department, and including on Mountain and Ethel area and Cordova. As a matter of fact, today there were two of them each corner, and they were ticketing folks who were speeding or not stopping at stop signs. So I want to thank the Glendale PD for that. And that's basically it.
Just to add something briefly regarding the speeding problem on Chevy Chase, at the last city council meeting, a resident did come down to complain about, being tailgated and honked at by aggressive drivers when she was trying to drive her kids to school, and the fact that it was scaring her kids. I actually went down there on early Friday morning, and at the bottom of Chevy Chase, when you're coming down the hill, there's a flat part and a straightaway, and on the right-hand side, as you're heading toward downtown, there's one of those radar signs that says, your speed, whatever, speed limit 30 miles an hour. I sat there and watched traffic and watched that sign for a few minutes, and I have to say the majority of people are obeying the speed limit. But the ones who aren't are really disobeying it. I saw lots of people blow through there at 40 miles an hour. At above 40 miles an hour, the sign just blinks slow down. So they're going faster than 40 at that point. And I actually have photographs of some cars going through there at a high rate of speed. So again, to the extent that enforcement resources can be directed to that area, it would be a good idea. There's one more thing I wanted to mention very briefly. Make that two more things. There's a transit stop on Verdugo. It's on the southbound side, right where the park is. And there's a crosswalk adjacent to the transit stop, and it's located on the wrong side of the transit stop, so people getting off the bus have to walk around the front of the bus and kind of peer out to the left to make sure that there isn't any oncoming traffic. I don't know physically if there's enough room to redo that and maybe put the transit stop on the other side of the crosswalk, but that was one thing I wanted to mention. And the last thing is Caltrans has now turned on the on-ramp metering for the eastbound and westbound on-ramps onto the 210 freeway between the 134 and I-5. So that's a 25-mile stretch of freeway. I believe the eastbound ramps are metered in the morning and the westbound ramps are metered in the afternoon. and they are basically allowing one car per red, except for the eastbound on-ramp at La Crescenta onto the 210, which is allowing 2 cars per red. And since they've implemented that, we've had some backups onto city streets up in the Crescenta Valley. It's not necessarily in the city of Glendale, but there is a possibility that there might be some effects there. Just wanted to make staff aware of that.
We are, Mr. Chairman, if I may, we are going to be meeting with Caltrans. We've been to get all the ramp metering operation folks together with us to basically look at every ramp in the city of Glendale, because it's gotten to a point that we don't think we should be, storing freeway-bound traffic and backing it up on our streets, because it's creating more and more congestion at key streets. And then there is no reason at some of these locations they have to use a standard 1 vehicle. They can go to 2 vehicles per green time. We have some of those here in Glendale at the Monterey. You get a westbound on-ramp, you get 3 vehicles per. And that stretch of 134 is the heaviest going westbound. So there is ways to deal with that, and we'll report back to the Commission as we make progress with Caltrans.
Thank you.
I have one last question. On Lomita and Brand Boulevard, there is 2 churches. One side is Armenian church, the other one is a Catholic church. There's a lot of elderly people are crossing during the day, every day, and the crosswalk is not enough time to you can cross it, so it's suggested to have about 20 to 30 seconds extra for that Lomita and Brand. It's daily, it's very dangerous for the people that are elderly and they want to cross from one side to the other side. It's not enough time.
Okay, we'll look into that, possibly also put in countdown pedestrian heads that actually shows how many seconds they have to cross, and will help them in the process, but I'll look into that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I had a couple of quick updates for the Commission. In the next 3 to 4 Commission meetings, I'm going to be bringing back a number of issues to the Commission. One is will be our parking fund. As you see, we're generating revenue from the parking fund, but we also have expenses that we pay for our operations of the parking facilities, the maintenance of the meters, and so on. And we will be bringing you the parking fund so you can see how much revenue is generated, what our expenses are. In addition, as I discussed in the first item that you considered, was the transportation fund on the downtown. The revenue we generate from the meters, we have recommendations to capture those specific dollars and put them in a transportation fund that will not be mixed with the parking revenue that we get from elsewhere, from other parts of the city, with recommendations how to use them, because we definitely think that, as was outlined in the mobility plan, we need to improve transit, increase the frequency of transit in the downtown area so that we can encourage that, help bicycling, pedestrian, activities in the downtown. So we have a number of recommendations that we will be bringing to you in conjunction with our planning department that was involved in the mobility plan development. Also, we are updating our transit master plan, or essentially short-range transit plan. We have done what's called a line-by-line analysis. We look at all our routes and see how many people are using each route, and which parts of the routes are used more, which ones are used less. In order to achieve some efficiencies, we're going to have some recommendations for the Commission in terms of hours of operation, frequency of operation of the lines, or any adjustments we will be making. Our goal is to bring that to the Commission either in July or August. That's our plan. You may have heard or read or seen some of the presentations to the City Council on pedestrian safety. We're actively developing a pedestrian safety plan so that we can look at how we can reduce injuries or accidents or fatalities that has occurred in Glendale over the last several years. We had a major workshop that Commissioner Weissman attended that was plans of educational plan for all our staff, including the community members from the Glendale Community College, to to the Glendale Unified School District staff that is involved in safety, so that we can develop an action plan to improve pedestrian safety in the city, and bring recommendations to the Commission, eventually to City Council, for whether there are safety impacts or increases in funding that is necessary. We have also applied for a Safe Route to School grant to Caltrans, and we were fortunate to receive a grant total is $1 million grant, but there's a local match requirement, so we will approximately get about $850,000 from the grant. Identified a number of schools in the area where we felt we need to make safety improvements, and that grant will pay for it. The grant monies will flow in about 2 years, because that's where the cycle is when the money becomes available. However, we are planning to make changes that would be part of our local match, better signage, striping changes, sidewalk changes that's possible to do quickly before the school year begins in September. We will be bringing that information to the Commission. We also are developing an update to the bicycle master plan, and also there's a place grant that we have received. We have an individual that is working on that. We'll bring a Commission and input, a presentation on that to receive your input on the bicycle and the place grant that is currently underway. And as was mentioned by Commissioner Weissman, we'll probably be bringing you the car park recommendations, whatever that might be, for your consideration. So anticipating in the next 4 Commission meetings that we will bring these issues, and there might be a need for some special meetings in between to address some of if there's some deadlines that we have to meet, those will be coming to the Commission at the special meeting. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Berganian. Any questions to Mr. Berganian? Okay. Next item, please.
Item 9, adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we adjourn.